Chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, known as Dhyana Yoga or the Yoga of Meditation, is a serene and profound journey into the heart of spiritual practice. Here, Lord Krishna gently unfolds the secrets of inner peace and self-realization to Arjuna, his devoted disciple. In this chapter, Krishna speaks of the disciplined life of a true yogi, one who masters their mind and senses, transcending the fleeting pleasures of the world. He describes the sacred art of meditation, urging seekers to find stillness within a balanced life, free from extremes. With poetic grace, Krishna compares the steadfast mind of a yogi to a flame undisturbed by the wind. He acknowledges the mind's restless nature but reassures that with persistent practice and detachment, tranquility is attainable. Krishna also touches upon the fate of those who falter on their spiritual path, offering hope that no sincere effort is ever wasted. Ultimately, Krishna exalts the yogi who, with unwavering devotion and love, constantly meditates upon the divine. This chapter is a luminous guide, inspiring seekers to delve deeply into meditation and find the eternal truth within. Verse 1. The Supreme Lord said, "One who performs their duty without attachment to the results and renounces the fruits of their actions is a true renouncer and yogi, not someone who merely gives up performing rituals." Verse 2. Know that what is called renunciation is the same as yoga or union with the Supreme. No one becomes a yogi without renouncing selfish desire. Verse 3. For the one who is just beginning the path of yoga, work is said to be the means. For the one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. Verse 4. When a person is not attached to sense objects or actions and has renounced all selfish motives, then they are said to be elevated in yoga. Verse 5. One must elevate oneself by one's own mind, not degrade oneself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. Verse 6. For one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy. Verse 7. For one who has conquered the mind, the supersoul is already reached, for they have attained tranquility. To such a person, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Verse 8. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi when they are fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. They see everything, whether pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. Verse 9. A person is considered still further advanced when they regard all, honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral, mediators, the envious, friends and enemies, the pious and sinners, all with an equal mind. Verse 10. A yogi should always try to concentrate their mind in a secluded place, and should always control their mind without desires and without possessing anything. Verse 11. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place, lay grass on the ground and then cover it with a deerskin and a soft cloth. The seat should neither be too high nor too low, and should be situated in a sacred place. Verse 12. There one should sit on it firmly and practice yoga by controlling the mind and senses, purifying the heart and fixing the mind on one point. Verse 13. One should hold one's body, neck and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Verse 14. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Verse 15. Thus practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist attains to the kingdom of God by cessation of material existence. Verse 16. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much, or does not sleep enough. Verse 17. He who is temperate in his habits of eating, sleeping, working, and recreation can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. Verse 18. When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines their mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, they are said to be well established in yoga. Verse 19. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in their meditation on the transcendent self. Verse 20. In the stage of perfection called trance, or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. Verse 21. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys themselves through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. Verse 22. Upon gaining this, one thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even amidst the greatest difficulty. Verse 23. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Verse 24. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with undeviating determination and faith. One should abandon, without exception, all material desires born of false ego and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. Verse 25. Gradually, step by step, with full conviction, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. Verse 26. From whatever and wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. Verse 27. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. They are beyond the modes of material nature, and thus they can see the self within. Verse 28. Steady in the self, being freed from all material contamination, the yogi achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in touch with the supreme consciousness. Verse 29. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. Verse 30. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is they ever lost to me. Verse 31. Such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the Supersoul, knowing that I and the Supersoul are one, remains always in me in all circumstances. Verse 32. They are a perfect yogi who, by comparison with their own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. Verse 33. Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. Verse 34. The mind is very restless, turbulent, obstinate and strong, O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Verse 35, Lord Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. Verse 36, for one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work, but he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. Verse 37, Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? Verse 38, O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a person, being deviated from the path of transcendence, perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? Verse 39, this is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely, but for yourself no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. Verse 40, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Son of Pritha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction, either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. Verse 41. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Verse 42. Or they take birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. Verse 43, on taking such a birth they revive the divine consciousness of their previous life, and they again try to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. Verse 44, by virtue of the divine consciousness of their previous life, they automatically become attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. Verse 45. And when the yogi engages themselves with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, then ultimately, after many, many births of practice, they attain the supreme goal. Verse 46. A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. Verse 47. And of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within themselves, and renders transcendental loving service to me. Such a yogi is the most intimately united with me in